520 years ago, the world fell into chaos. Technology and civilizations collapsed as the appearance of many and varied monsters threatened humanity with extinction. Thankfully, humans were able to use energy known as yuan qi to combat these monsters. The cultivation techniques and martial arts of the past became once again integral as humanity's last hope against the monsters. In Starshine Base, a martial art academy, an instructor demonstrates to his students the forging 18 styles, but the teenagers are unenthusiastic as they have already learned it as it's part of the basics. The instructor is annoyed before noticing one student taking his lessons seriously. It's Feng Yun, an orphan who was never taught martial arts before. The instructor gives him a pitying look before threatening the hard-headed kids to make them do push-ups if they don't pay attention to the lesson, which immediately makes them obedient. While Yoon continues to try his best, the instructor judges that he has no chance to become a martial artist even if he trains hard, as he has no resources or foundations. Later, the students are given time to rest before self-study starts. However, Yoon continues to practice the basics, thinking he needs to learn quickly as the teacher's lessons are fast-paced. Still, he thinks the skills he's learning are too basic, and he becomes frustrated, silently asking why he has no special talent like the ones who end up transmigrated get. He was once an adult from the 21st century's Earth when he suddenly transmigrated while walking on the road. His necklace suddenly shined, and the next moment, he was in a body of a 14-year-old boy. He used to practice martial arts, but currently he can't gather enough yuan qi to use them, so it's become practically useless to him. The only thing he can learn is the forging 18 styles that everyone has already learned back when they were young. Suddenly, there's a commotion as a graduate student arrives. He's Lin Kuan, High Lan Academy's #1 genius. As Lin is from a rich family from a young age, he's soaked in a medicine bath and has a good foundation. Yoon uses that many older people can't reach Lin's standard and only end up being kicked out of the academy. When Lin passes by Yoon, suddenly, a system activates. His mirror space has been crafted. Yoon's necklace shines, and the next moment, he's surrounded by my mirror shards. The system notifies him that Lin has been selected as the projection target and asks Yoon for his confirmation. Unsure, he replies yes, and immediately, a mirror forms in front of him, with Lin's image reflected on it. Curious, Yoon approaches the mirror, about to touch it, and wonders if this is his special skill. Unexpectedly, his hand gets swatted away, and a girl with a large chest emerges from the mirror, telling him not to touch it with his dirty hand. The pretty, voluptuous girl looks at him sternly, saying it's only common sense. Awkwardly, Yoon replies nothing that's been happening is common sense to him. The girl then warmly welcomes him to the mirror space. She introduces herself as an endless projections incarnation. She explains that the endless projection mirror world is created in his consciousness. She makes him look in the mirror, where it's showing him his meager and mediocre stats. Then she shows him the projection of Lin's stats, and she praises Yoon for picking him as his first projection target. He comments on the drops indicated, and she confirms that it's what he will receive if he manages to defeat Lin. Seeing that he understands the mechanics, Miss Mirror wants to start the first battle. Yoon exclaims that he still has questions. He asks her what's happening to his body since they're within his consciousness. She tells him he's fine, probably dazing around and looking stupid. She assures him he'll get used to it after he learns how to multitask. Next, he asks her if he will die if he loses a fight, and she explains that, of course, he won't, since it's a battle happening in his mind. However, his experience of death will be realistic, as well as the pain that comes with dying. She then informs him that he can lower the difficulty by matching the projection's cultivation to his, a normal human, which isn't against the rules, but the drop rate will be lowered. Since he doesn't want to experience death, he decides to lower the projection's cultivation. However, he suddenly hears his father's voice, saying that won't do. He then remembers a memory from his youth, of his father telling Yoon that men can't pick the easy mode, as he'll end up missing many interesting and joyful moments. With a change of heart, Yoon states that easy mode is indeed boring. Miss Mirror, who's wearing a fake mustache, encourages him to ditch his past and walk the thorny path, to which he strongly agrees. Immediately, he hits her upon realizing what she's done. He tells her to not project his memories without permission, and she relents, sporting a bump on her head. She then invites him to make a bet with her on how many times he will die before the class ends. Yoon silently thinks he doesn't want to die even once, before noticing that Lin's projection has a sword. He uses a sword skill, making Yoon scramble quickly to escape and explain how unfair it is. Miss Mirror announces that it's also possible to change the battleground, but since Yoon is busy, she decides to change the setting to that of a forest. Surprised, Yoon crashes headfirst into a tree, before quickly running away as the projection relentlessly chases after him. He's only constantly dodging his attacks, and Yoon desperately tries to think of a way to counterattack, or else he'll just end up dying. From the skies, Miss Mirror chuckles upon seeing Yoon finally calming down and thinking. Meanwhile, Yoon observes that he's getting better at dodging and judges that fighting the projection for half an hour wouldn't be a problem. He wonders if the projection feels more tired as he's wearing heavy alloy armor. Trying to come up with another strategy, Yoon thinks that it would be impossible for him to destroy the alloy armor, but he can still aim for its weak spots. He moves to kick the projection's knee, but the other dodges. Still, Yoon's opponent lost the chance to counterattack. With quick thinking, Yoon launches an attack and realizes that the projection's weakness is his lack of combat experience. Yoon uses that in his past life, he spent more time in combat, unlike Lin and the others, who spent more time using resources to forge the body's foundation. Even though they're stronger, Yoon has lived far longer than them, stepping on the projection's body so he can't escape. He takes a large rock and declares that he wins before smashing it on his opponent's head. Later, Miss Mirror praises his unexpected win. She had been sure that he would die, but Yoon is more concerned about what drop he got from the fight. She tells him not to worry as every projection target's first death will have a drop rate of 100%, but when she jokingly reveals that it's her kiss that's his reward, he's unimpressed. His real drop reward is a skill, rank 1 turtle snake forging technique. Miss Mirror tells him to be grateful as the price of learning this skill costs 30,000 yuan. It's far better than free garbage. After she tells him how to unlock it, Yoon yells extract. The power swirls in his hand, and unconsciously, his breathing became long and deep, sounding very ancient like that of an old dormant tortoise or a sleeping snake. Yoon inhales deeply, and with a sudden exhalation, he punches the air. He happily exclaims that he's become stronger and that the chi in his blood increased. However, Miss Mirror tells him that it's only his imagination. She tells him to go back into the real world and practice hard. When Yoon wakes, he sees his instructor scowling at him. The instructor asks him why he isn't having his lunch, and he lies that he was just revising their lesson. The instructor then tells him that there's going to be an emergency teachers meeting in the afternoon so the students can go home first. Quickly, he thanks the teacher and leaves. The instructor sighs as there's no point for Yoon to work hard as he's already lost at the starting line. Meanwhile, Yoon struggles through the city's traffic, and half an hour later, he arrives at Shuguang Welfare Institute where he lives. Yoon thinks the people who live there are like a family. The door opens, and he's greeted by a pretty girl named Lan, who questions him about why he's not in school. He explains that there's a teacher meeting, before asking her why she came home early. She replies that her teacher's son just died in the war, and that's why they're given a rest day. Miss Mirror, who's been observing through Yoon's eyes, exclaims that he has a childhood sweetheart and comments that she's not as pretty as herself. Yoon asks her if there are any leftovers as he hadn't eaten lunch yet. She tells him he's just in time as she just made pork braised in sweet sauce to celebrate his first day of school. Finding it delicious, he gobbles it down. Lan explains how she cooked it, but he doesn't understand her confusing explanation. Meanwhile, Miss Mirror throws a tantrum as she's watching the scene, saying she wants to eat too. She turns off her TV like mirror while saying she wants to leave and go to the outside world. Later, in a dessert, Yoon is training again, punching Lin's projection. Miss Mirror tells him to train harder as he should have stamina after having braised pork, and bewildered he asks her how she knew what he had for lunch. On his 25th fight against the projection, Yoon gets slashed by his opponent's sword. In the 44th duel, he manages to push the projection into a pool of lava, while during his 52nd fight, he successfully chokes Lin's projection. Yoon complains that though he died so many times, he can only best a stronger average person with a lethal weapon. She tells him he only has himself to blame for being so weak. She reminds him that what they're doing isn't a game, and he responds that he's been grinding to get some pills before he can start cultivating. She then tells him he already got a pill, but he was too busy fighting to notice her notification. Yoon accuses her that she didn't let him know on purpose. She ignores him and says he has a bottle of first-grade elixir blood energy pills. Blood energy pills are the most commonly used elementary pill for cultivation. Miss Mirror suggests that he find a quiet place, use a pill, and start practicing the tortoise and snake forging technique to raise the probability of successfully learning it. She also gives him ordinary clothes which are too big for him, but Yoon wants them, already planning to sell them to make money. Unknown to him, Lan is trying to eavesdrop on him outside his door. She's worried as he didn't eat last night's dinner and today's breakfast. She knows she shouldn't disturb someone who's cultivating, but she just wants to know how he is. Suddenly, the door opens, and an exhausted Yoon comes out. He thinks he trained too much and decides to manage his time to cultivate efficiently and healthily. For now, he plans to restrain himself. Recalling how Miss Mirror can see through his eyes, he angrily exclaims that she should give him privacy. Lan cries she's sorry, shocking him, In a trembling voice, she tells him she was just worried about him, and he quickly explains that he wasn't talking about her at all. Appeased, she smiles and hands him his lunch. She reminds him that it's almost time for school. He thanks her, musing that she seems to like the original owner of his body. Later, at an abandoned wasteland in an outer city park, Yoon deems the place great for cultivating. Yoon thinks that if it weren't for the sake of entering the inner city, he won't waste time attending school. He plans to get a break from school so he can train. In the meantime, he should keep his abilities and training a secret. Withdrawing the bottle from his inventory, he takes a blood energy pill and starts his cultivation. He practices his tortoise and snake forging technique, absorbing yuan qi and tempering his body. 9 days later, Yoon can now generate chai, finally becoming a beginner rank reserve martial artist. Quickly, he returns home. He plans to eat dinner, grind against Lin's projection, and hopefully get some useful drops. Later, while Yoon faces off against the projection, Nis Mirror tampers again the cultivation level of his opponent, making the fight more difficult again for him. However, Yoon is determined to show that he can win. He dodges his opponent's attacks, and using his improved speed and strength, he takes a jagged piece of wood and jams it against the neck of the projection. Immediately, he gets a notification. He just received the rank 1 martial skill, Sword Flash, and Miss Mirror congratulates him on his rare drop. Excitedly, Yoon extracts it. Instantly, his brain received information and experience on how to use it. Using some wooden chopsticks, he generates chi and slashes the air using the skill. A great force comes with the swing of his chopsticks, but they break. He states it's a pity that he doesn't have a real sword, as the chopsticks were unable to unleash even just half of the strength of the skill. He's confident to say that currently, if he and the real Lin have the same martial rank, he's much stronger than the latter. He reflects that it's such a huge benefit for him to instantly learn a skill without even cultivating it himself. Recalling that the school has swords, he plans to borrow one the next day and try his new skill.